the Common Man Podcast with your host, David Redmond.
Welcome to today's episode of Common Man Podcast. My guest today is Sam Parkinson, and he is a brother that goes to men's group with me. He's a musical brother that volunteers at church, plays amazing piano. And he also is in another men's group that I kind of helped co-start with a buddy, Tyler Goodman. And he's joining us today because there's this really unique thing about life with Christ, relationship with Christ, that is kind of an unknown, and I think in the church, and then 100% outside the church. And Sam's story is one that he's going to take us through, but I really want to dig in. So I'm going to quit talking, and I'm just going to ask Sam, would you just jump in to where the Bible became really interesting, what you did to dig in, where it took you, and then where it took you after you began to critique it?
Yeah. Well, I was saved.
You good? Okay.
We good?
Yeah, you're good. No, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was about 7 when I got saved. I grew up in church. I was always around church. My parents had us in there, kind of the stereotypical Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night kind of thing. And so it was always a part of what it was that we were doing. And I honestly loved it.
Amen.
I really did. I never really complained too much about going to church.
Was your father staff?
He wasn't,
Okay.
but he was he was like an elder,
Yep.
Kind of stuff like that at the time. And he was in the band, always involved in the music.
You told me that.
He played the bass guitar, and then
Yeah,
my mom would sing on the praise team, 'cause that's what they called them then. You had kind of like your lead singer, then you had like a group of like 4 or 5 people on the praise team. So she'd be on the praise team. But yeah, I was just always there. And I remember from a pretty young age, middle school, especially high school, I took faith pretty seriously. I remember falling asleep to worship music when I was a kid. I don't even know what I had it on, because back then it was I guess iPods were kind of when I was in high school. But I would just be playing a worship playlist to sleep every single night.
Right.
Or I'd be crying myself to sleep in prayer,
Wow.
many nights.
Wow.
I remember trying to really clumsily tell my friends the gospel.
Wow.
Usually in a pretty bad way. Where if you die tomorrow, you know where you're gonna be.
Right.
And it was out of a concern for their well-being.
Yep.
I cared deeply for them, and I wanted them to have what I had. So there was so much genuine stuff about that faith. I remember being in church camp, over the summers, and I was always the kid when the pastor would call up at kind of near the end of the week, be like, does anyone want to come and just testify to what God's done in your life? And that'd always be maybe 5 or 6 out of several hundred, and I was always one of the 5 or 6. I remember admitting to a porn addiction in front of 300-something kids.
Dang.
And my mom was also a counselor at the time for the girls at the camp. And so, that's I just took it seriously. And I remember feeling some kind of, I responded to a call to ministry one of those nights as well. I think it was my senior year, I think, in high school. So yeah, I loved it. It was a huge portion of my life.
And you're playing music then as well?
And I was playing music, yeah. About 6th grade is probably 12 or 13 years old is about when my first time kind of being on stage was. And I was playing, a big B3 organ.
Wow, you played organ?
Yeah, well,
wow, that's cool, man.
Yeah, I wasn't super awesome at it. I was a pretty good 12-year-old. So was doing that, and then kind of transitioning into piano and stuff. But yeah, I was 6th grade on. I was playing on stage on Sundays, and so, and then very involved in youth group, inviting all my friends and all this stuff. I think I was definitely known for that kind of thing in high school, just being that kid. But I felt a call to ministry, and I just kind of naturally thought that might mean that I go to school and major in that kind of thing. And I wrestled through high school, so I had gotten a couple scholarship opportunities, and one was Newberry College, and they were at the time they were a solid D2 school, like top 3 in the country, competing.
D2 sports.
Yeah,
And
D2
size.
college sports. Yeah.
Okay.
And so they were kind of regularly in the national championship conversation, and it seemed like I could go there, I could wrestle, and then I could.
Oh, you were wrestling as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. So
Praise the Lord.
wrestled all through high school. Yep, in that first year of college, and then I hated it, but I went there because they had a Christian ministry program, and so I could wrestle and do this thing that I thought was the natural next step for, being called into ministry. And so,
Were you that good in wrestling that you were going to be able to wrestle college?
I mean, I was pretty good. I mean, I guess it depends on, what you mean by pretty good. I was pretty good for upstate South Carolina. For the state of South Carolina.
Cool.
But yeah, no, that's a whole different rabbit hole.
Oh man,
wrestling.
I'm coming back to that, bro.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I spent a lot of time in college kind of exploring. I ended up transferring to Anderson University.
So you went to Newberry.
I went to Newberry for freshman year, and then I transferred to Anderson University after that.
Okay.
So I just really didn't enjoy it a whole lot.
Uh-huh.
And so I got into the Christian theology program at Anderson University. Just kind of continued that studying. And meanwhile, kind of on the outside, I'm starting small groups, and I'm doing the same thing I was doing in high school. It's just kind of maturing into something a little different. And it was started off very well intentioned, and I think good motives, but I began to equate knowing about God as knowing God. And what didn't help was that I started this loop where I would go learn about something about God, and I'd get really excited about it, and then I'd want to share it, and I'd share it with these people in these groups that I had started, and I would get all this really positive feedback, because either it was like what this person needed to hear at this time, or, and then it just kind of eventually led to I started learning these things so that I could get people's feedback.
Okay.
Or I could be known as a wise guy, or
so they gave you more of their attention, and other people gave you their attention as you were able to kind of discern spiritual matters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But what you said, knowing about God, is or isn't the same as knowing God. That's very confusing. Imagine someone's never heard that. Well, how would you explain that?
Yeah. Well.
And now, granted, Sammy's been in the church. You were born in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you're in college, and you're realizing that head information isn't the same as person-to-person information, which is what God invites.
Yeah.
And so, how would you further expound?
Yeah. Well,
did you know that was what was going on?
not really.
Okay.
No, which is, we'll get into this part in a little bit, but that's ultimately God's grace to me, was allowing me to discover that. And that was one of the things that led me kind of into a crisis of faith. Or
what do you mean by God's grace to you?
Well, it's God's grace on this side of it, in hindsight.
Now,
knowing
in your
that
current life.
He's like, you aren't seeing this the way that I want you to see it. And because you're my kid, I want the best things for you. And right now, there is a point at which where you're going to go, the circumstances of life are going to cause that to crumble.
Right. And so at the moment, you were operating strong
Yeah.
and building community.
Yeah.
But
all of a sudden, it stopped working, though.
it stopped working.
It stopped working because my understanding of spiritual formation when I was a kid was going to church. It was learning about God. It was reading your Bible, praying. And it's not that those things aren't true. It's just that at some point, my theory of change, what that looked like, wasn't actually producing results because I still had a pornography addiction. I still struggled with anger. There was these things that I could not get over. I couldn't get past. And what really stunk was I also have been a striver my whole life.
Okay.
And that was...
Okay, hold on a second. All right, so, yeah, no.
Yeah, you just stop me anytime
No,
because
don't
I'm
worry,
going to keep
bro.
going.
So you're in church.
Yep.
You're learning.
Yep.
You're reading. You're praying. And yet you still had, to use a religious term, like a stronghold of like sexual lust.
Yeah.
Or a stronghold, or just an active anger issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were like, dadgummit, the Bible explains me to myself in such a way where this shouldn't be the results in my life within me based on my church, my learning, my reading, and my praying.
Yep.
It's other fruit, other actions, other expressions of being should be present.
Yep.
Is
The
that
inputs,
okay language?
yeah, it's kind of like the things that I were told, the inputs that would achieve particular outputs weren't working.
Right.
You know, so I'm doing these things, or I'm trying to do. Okay, I must not be doing them enough.
Okay. So then you're
Or I
right.
need to take it to another level, or whatever. And little did I know is I'm kind of on the wrong path entirely.
Wow. Okay.
And so, and go back to the striving thing, which is what made all of this even worse. You know, I was a decently smart kid. At least I was successful in school. You know, that doesn't always equate to like, you know, street smarts or anything like. But I was pretty good academically, and I was in the music. I was doing athletics, and as a firstborn, you know, kid, and man, I got so much positive feedback from the adults in my life when I excelled in those areas.
Yeah. You got lots of reinforcement
I did.
that you were on the path,
I was
working to good ends.
Yes, like the pride that I would see on my father's face when I pinned somebody else,
Dang, wow.
or his voice
I
in
can
the crowd.
only imagine how powerful that was.
Yes, and so as a developing young mind,
Wow.
that was so desirable that I pursued that in every area. And that's one of those things, like societally, it reinforced it even more because those are things that lead you to being successful, or you're going to go far in life because you're smart, you're good at this, you're good at this, you're good at this. And so I just started striving because I wanted my daddy's approval. And then when you have that as such a foundational understanding of life, it's so easy for that to translate immediately and heavily into your relationship with God. And that's anti-gospel. It really is. It's not good news that I have to strive. And that's where it's like it came back to the knowledge thing. Like the more that I know him, he's going to be more proud of me. You know, the
And that
less
was
that
a broken idea.
Yes, it was. The
that you
less
were
that I
dealing with.
sin, the more he's going to be proud. And I couldn't stop sinning. And so
And
it's
the
like,
more blessings or the more fruits of the
Yes.
Spirit or
yes. And so it was all setting itself up for what became, I've described it in many ways, but it was like a dark night of the soul, crisis of faith, deconstruction, whatever you want to call it. There was a point at which all of these things were setting up. It was like a glass palace. My theology, my understanding of the different arguments, for Calvinism and Arminianism and thisism and thisism and these ideas of creation, whatever. I even had some biblical, languages, that I was like getting pretty fluent in, at least in understanding and be able to read.
How did those, and so you're building your house, you're building yourself on things. It's hard not to use like spiritual language when we're talking about these things because they are so very spiritual. So if I don't explain something or you have a question about something, just put it in the comments below and we can hit it later. But as you were living, think about it, as you're relating to your dad and you pinned somebody and you remembered that you ran 3 miles every other day to prep to pin somebody, it would only make sense. And your father praised you. 2 massive reinforcement like things that affect your I mean, you probably affect your mitochondria
Yeah.
when your father cheers you.
Yep.
And when you're rewarded by the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you've been you kept working hard to teach, encourage, love, reach you put yourself in the church, but also reach the people for the church. And yet there was still stuff that was getting created as well that was just unhealthy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from?
I'm not sure anyone can really avoid it, to be honest.
Okay, but where does it come from?
Man, I couldn't even tell you. I can tell you for me.
You were doing everything, Sam.
Well,
This isn't fair.
Yeah, I was
what's
doing.
going on? You were doing everything.
I was doing the things on the surface that should line up with
the certain results of being of freedom in the world.
Yes.
But like, why didn't it work?
Well, because what I was doing lined a bit too much up with actually what makes you successful in the world, and not necessarily successful in a relationship with God. And that is entirely upside down from what I think it should be, and what I was kind of, at least my understanding of what I grew up with.
Did you think you were trying to make more of yourself?
That was certainly a part of it.
So do you think that maybe you were still in the throne as opposed to God being in the throne? Or like,
sure.
On a piece of paper, someone would read this and be like, "Dag, man, that guy Sam, like, if he can't do it, I know I can. If he didn't do it, how am I supposed to do it? I can barely stay off of blah, blah, blah." You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a religious discipline side of faith, but there is also this relationship side of faith. And there's something about my attempt to use my willpower to muster out the fruits of the Spirit, as opposed to allowing the Spirit to do what only the Spirit can do.
Okay, so how would that play out in relationship to church? Because you're doing church learning, reading, praying.
Mm-hmm.
How would we do church like that? Not in relationship, but in religion. How does that happen?
How do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to kind of go through the motions and show up and think that you're checking boxes.
So serving, which is beautiful and engaging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How else do people do church, but yet miss out on the person of God?
Well, I mean, I think you can do anything and miss out on God, or you can be doing things for God. That you can. That's the really sneaky thing about it, and that's why I didn't see it for the longest time, because I was doing a lot of these things for God, yet I was missing God entirely, and that's hard. But that gets to the whole sanctification process to start. Like, you start with multiple, like, there's like the surface level, like, gross sins, where not gross as in like yucky, but gross as in like, they're like murder, stealing. They're the ones that are like just blatant, clear outside of you kind of sins. And then you go a layer deeper, and then you get to like motivations. They're things that you start to realize, like, you're making actual decisions. And then there's like sins of omission, where you're not doing something you should do. But then there's layers even beneath that, where it's like trust structures.
Oh man.
Underneath, that are at the very base of who you are, and it's hard to know where even they come from. But you have to talk to a child psychologist probably to get to some of these, like, where they actually start, and then how they're reinforced and how they grow. But so many of this stuff I know comes from like just all the different stages of my life. My understanding of God when I was a kid, like, kids can't think outside of black and white.
Mm-mm.
They don't have the mental capacity to even do that.
Mm-mm.
And so it's very easy to see, like, well, if I do this, it's good. If I do this, it's bad.
Right.
If I do this, God will be happy. And if I do this, God will be sad.
Yeah, they also can't boundary themselves from the darkness in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah.
Because they see everything as this beautiful light.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's beautiful things about being a kid when it comes to faith as well, but there's also just those limitations. And if you don't allow your faith to progress, that's where it can become tricky. Because as a kid, God doesn't expect children to see Him in ways that they can't even mentally, like they're not even capable of doing.
Right.
You know, but
You know-
at some point you progress beyond that, because I know you can probably attest to this, but there's a lot of tensions.
Well, and what
in-
you're and
in
you're
Christianity.
you're using progress, and it's easy to explain that, but to explain it in the way in which God would invite us is to explain it in relationship to Him. So how do you progress in a relationship, which is what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
You know, just going to church, and going to church because it's beautiful and it blesses you or you serve, but yet the Spirit is calling you away from something that's causing problems at home, or calling you into a season of repentance, or calling you to let go of, worshiping a sport activity, or worshiping, or like spending too much time in food. I was listening to a sermon on the way here, and it was talking about like the invitation to get into a relationship with God is the invitation to reorder the loves of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've heard that said a million times. St. Augustine kind of coined that conversation because his life was a perfect display of it. And so church, we go in because it like blesses the physical, emotional, and spiritual, but yet then we go home and 95% of our week they're not reordered. We're not reordering any loves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I'm saying all this to further elaborate with the crash that I think that you kind of found yourself in.
Yeah.
Is that church feels good, and I do it because my people are there and I love them, and like the learning, it feels good, and it also is challenging, and I get to look at beautiful things. The reading it, all those things, the prayer, all those things. But until we begin to like just do what He says, we don't have a relationship with Him.
Yeah.
Would you characterize your own moment like that?
I would say
You
that
knew about Him, but you didn't have a relationship with Him?
that's where it gets a little tricky for me when I think about my story, because there was very authentic, real experiences that I had with God.
Yeah.
And this is where the whole grace thing, when I look at this whole situation, hindsight comes in, is because I was walking with God in the way that I knew how, and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it was right.
Amen.
But God doesn't. God chooses to come down and deal with, like, to be in a relationship with us as we must understand Him at all stages of our life.
Amen.
I'm never going to fully get it.
Right.
But at that season of my life, what needed to happen was that we almost needed a clean slate.
So in college, all of a sudden you're hit with this.
It was actually a little bit post-college.
Post-college, you're hit with this, and what happens?
It just, so many things fell apart.
Like what?
So I don't know why it's been very fuzzy for me when I've looked back and I've told my story many times. I can't give you a specific thing that was like the thing or the question or the doubt that really caused the snowball to start
Right.
rolling down the hill. But once it started, there was no going back. It was like I had tasted things I couldn't untaste. I have seen things I can't unsee. It was all of a sudden realizing how legalistic I had become. There was like this pendulum shift, where I was all of a sudden becoming very antagonistic to all the things that I believed growing up, because I was seeing all the ways that those things fell short, where fundamentalism fell short, where legalism by itself fell short. And so just the natural heart reaction was that I became now an antagonist
Right.
towards the things that were, my whole life, because I had felt lied to in some ways,
Wow.
or deceived,
Yeah.
or that things were being held more. I realized I was in an echo chamber most of my life. And then I was pursuing learning more and more and more so that I could defend every single thing inside this echo chamber. And so I was pursuing apologetics that would defend
Oh man.
everything that I believed. And it was great until all of a sudden I realized I didn't even know that under the umbrella of Christianity there was like so many different arguments for all the things that I've like held this way,
Right.
tight-fistedly.
Man.
And so it was just this reaction. Now I'm an antagonist. I can't go back. All of a sudden I'm like, I can't not see these things for the way they are. And, or I understood the Bible as just like 100% literal and historical. That was it. And it wasn't that it didn't have beauty, in that way when the Bible was trying to be literal and historical, but it was also missing some of the deeper truths of the stories. It was arguing over whether Jonah got swallowed by a fish and what kind of fish, as opposed to actually hearing the heart of what that story was in the first place. It was stuff like that. And then, of course, like in the middle of all of this, like my wife and I, we'd married a couple years at this point and got married under some understandings, with what we thought were like agreed upon things, foundational things in our marriage, like being a Christian. And so that was, of course, like probably one of the most difficult things, was just what that did to our relationship. That pulled the rug out from under her. And so we're feeling that I'm having issues at church,
Where were you then?
I was at New Spring. Yeah.
Dang.
And so
How long ago was that?
Oh man.
10 years?
This was
Yeah.
about 8 years ago probably. And so but there was just all the circumstances around are as important as the fact that like I am now becoming isolated. Even in my own house, I'm isolated from my wife. My parents don't really understand what's going on, and I'm feeling so lonely. I'm kind of terrified because I didn't even really mean to get here. I'm pursuing what I thought was right, and then I find myself lonely. I find myself afraid. I find myself in a spot where like my worldview that I've had for my entire life is now crumbling all around me. And I don't know where to go because everywhere I do go, people are like, the questions you're asking are not okay. And it's like, well, if I can't even take these...
Don't ask that to me. It'll challenge my own faith.
Yeah, it was like I couldn't take these things to the people that I was supposed to be able to take them to at the time. And so I'm by myself. And the only people that I have community with are people who are going through similar things.
Yes.
And all we do is just kind of feed each other the same thing.
It's another echo chamber.
I traded one echo chamber for another echo chamber.
Man. And that can be a death to our relationship with the body.
Yeah.
And when I say the body, I mean the church, like going to church.
Yep.
That thing right there can create a death to your willingness to go and be in the body.
It did.
And go to church and be in the church.
There was about a year time where I didn't step foot in a church from hurt and from like deep skepticism. There was some right things that I felt wrong, and as I became like this, antagonist of everything that I held dear, I was unknowingly throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
And it ended up where...
Which we all do as we're like parsing through new information pieces in our life.
Yes.
And the pendulum is you got to resist the pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
If you're pendulumy and you're finite, it's an all or nothing.
Yep.
I mean, every person that's married knows that that's a recipe for disaster in relationships, especially with God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I find myself riding the pendulum.
You were on the pendulum like a mug.
I was. I rode it hard. Fortunately, I only rode it once. So,
Lord.
And then of course there's a couple years span. And actually, let me tell you where I got to the bottom, I would say, of this journey, where it's like maybe the darkest part of the valley is I remember where I was driving. I remember on what street I was on. And like, the question came to my mind is like, am I going to believe that God exists?
That's simple.
That's simple.
The question came to your mind.
Question came
when
to my
you
mind.
say that, what does that mean?
Well, looking back, I'm pretty sure I know where that question came from.
Which is
the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, which is a person. It's one of the three persons of God.
Yes.
Spoke to you in your insides.
Yep. And, at that point, I was kind of skeptical, but I didn't know how I could find meaning and purpose in life without God. And I couldn't really Maybe it's because I grew up in church. Maybe it's because I had always been able to derive some level of purpose and meaning because I believe that God exists. Or maybe it was because as I was doing all this searching and everything else, I wasn't very convinced by the people who say you can find it elsewhere.
Yeah, which makes sense. So what you just said was, I didn't know much, but one thing I did know is that I couldn't find purpose and meaning without God.
Yep.
And yet I didn't understand what the purpose and meaning would look like.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that the Spirit had just spoken to me. And what did he say again?
It's like, you're going to believe if God exists.
Are you going to believe if God exists?
Yeah. And I answered that question in the affirmative that day, you know, and I kind of...
Are you going to believe if God exists? And you said, yes. I'm going to believe.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know if that was exactly the turning point moment, but it was a very visceral moment that I remember. And so it's probably 2 or 3 years after that I actually get baptized. So it's not like that was a quick thing. It was just the moment at which I was walking in a particular direction, and then there was a direction change.
Yeah.
And so...
Which is basically almost everyone's story in the Bible.
Yeah.
Almost every story you read in the Bible is like that.
Yep. And so, you know, things start kind of happening slowly. You know, my wife, and this is one of the coolest parts of my story, her faith was so dependent on her father growing up. You know, she doubted her salvation a lot. Her dad was a strong man of faith. And so her faith was really attached to his.
Right.
And then it transferred to me, you know, because at the time I had a really strong faith, but, you know, all the questions that she used to take, the doubts she used to take about her salvation, she took them to me now instead of her father.
Ooh-wee.
And so I have this moment,
right.
you know, where I have basically my faith is in dust.
Yep.
It's in rubble.
And what happened to hers?
Basically the same thing. The rug got ripped out, and she's like, I am either choosing to walk with God or I'm having to choose my husband.
Wouldn't it be great if God wanted to have a personal relationship with each of us?
Yeah.
And not have his relationship rely on anyone else?
Yeah.
That would be a really best design idea.
I think so. Which is why in about 6 months, she had a radical coming around of her faith with a confidence that is supernatural compared to where she was. And literally from that day forward, she's never questioned her salvation again. And it was a gift. She realized all the things that because it was almost as if there was things in her own faith that had to be deconstructed and torn down because they led to anxiety, they led to stress. It was not an easy yoke. It was a heavy, hard yoke that Jesus wanted to remove. And he removed me as the strength of her faith so that he could put on the easy yoke on her shoulders.
And so, you just said so much things. As she got older, she put her faith and her hope in her father, which is what we do with our parents. And then y'all got married, and she put like her stability, her hope for stability, and like the compass is responsibility on you.
Yeah.
And then you had like a moment where you pulled away to do a reevaluate, and that put her compass in a tailspin.
Yeah. And
she had no one to assign it to, which just showed her that she didn't have a relationship with God to the degree to which he was inviting her to, have her trust in him, let him determine her north, let him, like you said, you don't need to be responsible anymore, daughter, of your tomorrow, let me. And so,
yeah.
And when you had your thing, it gave her a chance to be like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I have no one now.
I have no one too. I need to like figure out if I have God now myself.
Yep.
And so y'all both had this like pressure cooker.
Yep. So she comes back around, and all of a sudden, like, I see visibly a change in her.
You did?
I did.
Which was what?
there was a peace.
And this was prior to
had?
you kind of like,
Oh yeah, I was still 2 years.
restabilize.
I was still 2 years down the road.
okay, you saw something. Okay, go ahead.
And so I watched her for 2 years change.
Wow.
And it was there was probably 100 things that happened, but that was the one thing that happened the longest and the most consistent that I got to see day in and day out,
Which was
her and her relationship with the Lord.
which was what?
It was.
What'd you see?
I saw her carry herself differently.
Like what?
I saw her confident.
Give me an example.
So there would be, I mean, I was used to having these, like, she struggled with anxiety a lot. And so multiple times a week, we'd probably get to points where, like, she's broken down.
Mhm.
She's overwhelmed with anxiety and stress
about
just anything. I mean, it could have been anything. Anything
Okay.
could have triggered it. It could have been things from the past. It could have been things from that week, from
Right.
conversations with other people that didn't go the way that she hoped.
right.
And so she would just get into these moments where, she's freaking out. And I am there and I am, doing what I would do, which is just trying to comfort her and,
Right.
trying to steer her
Yeah.
back, trying to help her, like, think, like,
Yeah.
something that's not.
Zoom out.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't pendulum.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
good husband
Yes.
things. Listen.
Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to do all these things, and all of a sudden, post this thing with her, like, I'm not doing that anymore.
You're not doing it because you have nothing to give.
Well, I don't have nothing to give, but she doesn't need it.
Okay.
It's like, instead of these things, it's like maybe once a month, and it's like a really serious issue, and it wasn't just like a small thing that most people just kind of shrug off and she freaked out about. It was like, okay, she's not the same person anymore. And then I saw, like, a trajectory.
So
in
you saw her
life.
not have a low. You saw her like have less anxious lows.
Yeah, less
Okay.
anxious lows. I saw a trajectory in her life.
And it's not because she was like bolting on more free highs. She was just as a byproduct of her nearness that had gotten established in relationship with God. She wasn't having the results, which are anxious lows.
Yeah.
By being near him and listening and talking.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think was her like? Was she churching, learning, reading, praying?
And she was doing
All the above?
all the above.
All the above.
Yeah. Well, there was a point where we were still not going to church, but she wanted to. She asked me one time, and this was like right before she had. Actually, no, it was right after she had kind of like her coming back time. But she was like, I feel like this is where God wants me to go, what He wants me to do, and I feel like I can't do that because of where you are.
Dang.
And when I like.
You
Again,
heard
I
that,
don't
didn't
know.
you?
This was the Spirit working in me. I wasn't even trying, but I was like, you need to do whatever it is that you feel like you need to do.
Wow.
I like released her. That's like something when she goes back and tells her story. That's something that it was like a huge point for her
Wow.
because she had been waiting
Yeah.
and wanting me to come along.
Yeah.
And so she had felt like I was holding her back. And I said, go, run, do it.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait for me. Like, I'm
Wow.
on my own journey, and I don't know why it's taking so long. I don't know why I'm so skeptical, why I feel so angry about this or that, but you could just go. You don't have to wait on me.
Man, that's some serious trust that you said that.
Yeah. And it worked out well because, like I said, she was the consistent thing the entire next couple years when she had her moment. And I just saw a trajectory in her life where she was just steadily changing for the good. I was seeing more fruit in her life. And then, of course, there was just several other things that happened. But, I remember having some conversations kind of nearing the end. I remember I reached a place where I knew people were praying for my heart to soften. Some people had told me that because they knew my heart was hard. I knew it was hard. But it had become soft enough to where I began to pray very small prayers, like few words.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart had become soft enough that I prayed, God, will you soften my heart?
Oh man.
And that was it. That's all I had faith to do. But I was shocked that I was even praying that. And then over time, there was little things, little conversations, random things I couldn't explain, or like my wife wanting to tithe all of a sudden. And, I finally give in. I'm like, you know what? Whatever. Let's just do it. And then every cliche tithing story happens over the next several months, things you can try to explain away logically, or, well, that probably would have come in either way, but they just all happen. Or, I start to soften a little bit. I'm starting to pray just a little bit more. And all of a sudden, like everything that I'm praying for starts happening.
And so did you start to have new perspectiving? Could you identify any new thinking?
Yeah.
What was like some of the breadcrumbs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like that point where I was like, okay, well, I'll believe as if God exists.
Okay.
So then who the heck is God?
Okay. So you started building upon that one corner term.
If God exists, who the heck is God?
I'm a yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fun.
So then it was like, okay, well, God is love. Where I was looking back and thinking about through my life experiences, and there was things that like I didn't have to go far on a limb to believe. Obviously love is a better way to be. It's a better thing to experience, and it's better even when you give sacrificially to somebody else. It's still better than the alternative.
It delivers.
And so it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, I believe that. I see that all around me. It's in all the stories we tell. Like it's everywhere. And so, okay, God is love. I can see that. And then I had my first son, and that was a huge factor. All of a sudden, okay, well, if God's love, and I just had this kid, and of course I'm in shell shock because this is my first kid, so you have no idea what to expect. And I feel things I never thought I could possibly feel for this being that has done nothing but take from me, has done nothing from take my sleep, my resources, everything about my life up until that point. And I feel about this boy in a way I've never felt. And if I can feel this way about my son, maybe that's what God's love is like. But times infinity,
right,
beyond what I could even possibly understand. So it's just little things like that. Those are some of the breadcrumbs, and then that's building and building and building. And I remember having a conversation with somebody, and I was trying to explain about where I was, about how I felt. And I've always been able to explain things and using metaphor. It's a way I've always understood things. And the metaphor that I would use is that I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. And to leap off this cliff would be to be fully abandoned to Christ. And I would occasionally keep feeling this wind at my back, pushing me, pushing me. And my fear was keeping my feet planted firmly on that cliff. Fear of what other people would think, not wanting to give people the satisfaction of, they had prayed for me, but yet they weren't really there for me. And so I didn't want to come back because I didn't want them to think that their prayer worked, even though they weren't actually there for me. Just all this stuff, that's like, it's totally not of the Lord, but it was this fear that was keeping me there. And then, of course, another thing that I was fearful of is like everything that I'd kind of built in my own life up to that point, I knew I was going to have to give up.
Like what?
Like what I wanted for my career. What I wanted for my young family, for my boys, for my wife, for my marriage, all these things. What was
one of the things that you had?
Well,
you knew you had to give up. Other than, like, can you be more specific?
Well, I mean, it was the fact that I was going to be giving up everything. It wasn't even a specific thing as much as it was like I knew, I had. This is the crazy part, I guess, is like I knew that I was going to have to count. I was counting the cost of what it was going to mean to follow Jesus.
Can you
and
think
I
of
knew
one thing?
Just one thing?
Yeah, just think of one thing that
I mean,
a man would deal with.
I didn't want to give up my idea of my career.
Okay, so you had a career path in mind.
I had a career path, and it was like, I'm going to earn more money. I'm going to do this side thing. I'm going to try to achieve this level of financial freedom and blah, blah, blah.
And you knew that if I jump off, I leave that behind.
It was like
that
obligation. My will for it
is
what I am surrendering.
Right.
Because it's not to say that there's something wrong with financial freedom.
No.
It's that if I'm going to surrender my will to the will of the Father, that means that I am pursuing His will, not my own.
Right.
And to leap off this cliff for me was to give up everything to
Right.
follow his will and his plan. And I had no idea what that was going to look like.
Right.
It was giving up control. It was surrendering to his will. I was surrendering to him being Lord, for me to pick up a cross, and I knew that that was going to come with a cost. And this was probably the first time in my life that I truly knew what that cost was before I made the decision, yes.
Mm.
And so one Sunday at church, I just had some expectation. You know, it was just in me from when I walked in the door. When the music started, I just feel it. My heart is like pounding out of my chest. I don't really know why. And there's this invitation at the end of the service. And like I said, fear was the thing that had been holding me back up to this point. And as the speaker's giving this invitation, it's not even a normal salvation invitation. It's like an invitation where, like, you know, you expect a bunch of people to stand up because it's like a charge kind of invitation. And I remember he was in the middle of giving his invitation. And I stood up because I wanted everybody to see me.
Dang.
And it wasn't because I wanted people to see me like I used to. It was that I was terrified to make this leap, and I'm freaking making the leap, and I want everyone to see the fact I'm making this leap. And so I stood up. And that was the point where that shackle of fear was broken. And again, it wasn't a moment where like everything just turned around at that moment, but that was the point where I had leaped off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
I was fully abandoned. This was where I was going to go. And so I made that decision. I remember a few weeks later, I'm playing on stage, and there's baptisms going on. And it was again, it was something I had a little bit of fear about, you know, because I just didn't know what people would think. I didn't know if it was my next step, what I should do.
You didn't want to ask God about it, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, but I saw this old man get baptized by his wife.
Oh, man.
And I
That'd be
was
cool.
like, okay. I mean, and like I said,
Ballsy.
my wife was the one steady witness in my life over that last 2 years.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, God, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so got off stage and then, you know, told that to some of the guys, and people were just super thrilled about that. So that's what I did. And ever since then, it's been almost exactly 2 years since I was baptized. And I cannot begin to explain the depth, the spiritual formation, the growth that has happened the last 2 years. It feels like a lifetime of spiritual maturity and growth in that amount of time. And I could not have ever imagined being here. My wife and I will look back now as she'll sometimes just hear the things that have come out of my mouth, and she'll start crying.
Dang.
Because she's like, I prayed for this for so long.
That's so cool, man.
I cannot believe that we are having this conversation right now, you know, or that you are saying that, you know, or that you're wanting to lead our family here to do this.
Can you think of an example?
I mean, there's been dozens of times that this has happened, you know, or even this morning, you know, my wife and I have, you know, kind of like these little weekly things, Monday mornings. And, you know, we start praying, you know, to start that meeting. And I get to the end and I'm done praying. And she's like, you just pray so beautifully,
Wow.
you know, and that has nothing to do with me praying. It has more to do with, like, how the heck are we here? It's just the grace of God that I'm here and I am praying, and she's just mind blown that God brought us here.
Is it reasonable to say for the guys that have been in church and are really dutiful in church, learning, reading, praying, but yet are still dealing with the fruit of like sexual lust and anger stuff, that they probably haven't pushed all of their chips in with the Lord?
It's possible. And I can speak to that more because when I came back to faith, I have not
Dealt with it at all?
I have not dealt with it again.
Dang, bro.
Which is what was the crazy thing, going back to the macro of some of the story, is like
Right.
the striver in me
Yeah.
and the desire to want to be able to do more for the Lord and want to know more about him and want to be able to tell others and all this stuff. Like, I just felt like I had to earn and earn and earn. And then, of course, I would disappoint him so much when I would mess up and all this stuff. These are things that are like preoccupying my mind all the time. But then I get to where I realize, like, I couldn't have done anything to earn this or deserve it.
Right.
And it was a gift, I believe, that he gave me when I came back, basically saying, I am the one who is responsible for your sanctification and for your growth. Your job is to bring your will and surrender it to me every single day. And if you do that, I'll do the work. I'll either bring the circumstance, I'll bring the person, I'll bring this or that, and I will cause you to become more and more like me as you yield your life to me. And that has been the freeing thing. And that's why, like, he freed me, he healed me from something that I struggled with since I was 12.
That's crazy, man.
And I can't take credit for it. I mean, of course, like, there's some wise things I tried to do. There's some practical things I try to do. You know, like, I don't go to sleep after my wife. I'm not watching TV after my wife goes to bed. Like, there's that. But that's not where the freedom came.
No.
You know, there's a difference between applying wisdom towards something and then being set free, being healed by the great physician of something.
Yeah, because your strategy, as evidenced by last week, still hadn't figured it out.
Yeah.
You know, and we all need that set free. We all need to be willing to say, my yes is on the table. Will you let him in, Johnny? My yes is on the table, and whatever you say, I'm done trying to figure this out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a really remarkable story. What up, Benji? Just hang loose. We're going to finish. We'll be here for another 10 minutes or so. You good? Glad you're here. I want this for more men. And I really do love, of all the stories that we get to hear. I love all the testimonies are fascinating. But yours uniquely it's like the typical American testimony. I've been in church my entire life, and I could probably stand up on the pulpit and teach and do the deliverable, and yet there's still this like overt last week's fruit of examples of like sexual lust and anger. And so I think like the reason we share these stories is because the pathway forward for Sam, nobody could have prescribed. Agreed? Right? The Bible wants to get in, the Bible and God and in His Word is inviting us to get into relationship with His realities. And community can accelerate our ability to understand and hear the Bible, can accelerate our ability to understand and hear ourselves, understand and feel what we're feeling, and understand what we're feeling. And yours, we all can lean into this story and find ourselves in it.
Yeah. Well, one thing that has made such a huge difference for me now is that being an apprentice and disciple of Jesus is where the money is. Because
you
especially
love that dude. What's
John Mark Comer.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him, Tyler State, and a lot of those guys.
What was that deliverable called?
Well, his Practicing the Way.
I'll put a link to that in the bottom.
Yes, but the idea is that you're being with Jesus, and then you become like Jesus by being with Him, and then eventually you do what it is that He did. And especially here, Southern Christianity, Bible Belt, there's a huge emphasis on a salvation moment.
Right.
And it's not that salvation isn't important. It's just that God has come to do way more than just that. It's like the kingdom is here and also not yet. And we're participating while we're here in the kingdom by becoming His apprentice, being with Him, becoming like Him. Like, that's a part of being a Christian, is to become like Jesus. It's not just to say, just to get your not going to hell ticket, and
it's not just adoption.
And just move on. Yes. It's not just adoption. Yeah. you are becoming something. And so as you apprentice to Jesus, you will become like him. And eventually you will start to react to things that maybe a couple years ago or 5 years ago you would have reacted a certain way. And now you're reacting in a way that is 100% natural. And it's maybe a way that Jesus himself would have.
Yeah.
And you begin to experience more of the fruits of the Spirit. And it's not something that you have mustered up. It's something that you have become.
Right.
And that is something that was not a part of my life. Like I told you about the theory of change I had in my life was just like, I'm going to try harder. I am going to read my Bible more.
Yeah, it's the hustle.
Yeah. And now it's the surrender.
And now that was the theory of change is hustle. Now it's surrender.
Yeah.
We're going to hang out again because I have so many more questions and I really won't. But I think putting a bow on that would be wise. And if this message bothers you because you're feeling guilty, that could be that the Bible says that the Spirit does the convicting, not us. No one can convict. The Spirit is speaking to you about conviction. And the cool thing is that that God, we believe, and that our leaders believe, is that God is the jam, and He delivers the goods. He delivers the best life. So hear that conviction and just like say, I'm down for whatever you're explaining to me. My heart is like, you know what I mean? But that's good. That's a loving Father, like taking me into His arms and saying, we got to walk with me here. Quit walking over there by yourself. And so if we can minister to you in any way, Sam, is there a way, or is there an invitation? Is there an invitation that you would like to put out to fellas out there that uniquely maybe have dealt with some of your season? There's a whole tranche of people, like 25 to 35, that have pulled away from the body.
Yeah.
And are like in the echo chamber of harshing on the bride.
Mm-hmm.
That seems dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and that seems like really overtly pharisaical.
Mm-hmm.
But is there like an encouragement?
Yeah.
Am I cutting too deep by saying that? Like,
no, I think
know.
I think what I'd want to say to that is that you need to apply the same level of skepticism to your own skepticism. Because it's very easy to tear things down, and it's a lot harder to construct something. And if you find yourself constantly destroying things, deconstructing them, being skeptical, there is a fruit to that. And pay attention to the fruit of it. You may realize if you actually stood on the outside of your life a minute and looked at it, that you don't actually like where you are.
Dude.
You don't have a lot of joy in your life. And if you want joy, and if you want peace, if you want all the things that your heart deeply craves and is longing for, you aren't going to find it at the end of destroying things, throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I know, right? Mm-hmm.
You're going to find it one place.
Yeah.
It's the place that I found it. It's an assurance that I did not know was possible. It didn't come because I knew all the arguments, or I had now mentally ascended to a point where I get it now.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think I know less now than I think I have ever. But one thing I know is this, is that He won't give up. He will always be knocking. And all you have to do is open the door. If you open the door, He's going to come running to you like the father did the prodigal son, put a robe around you, a ring on your finger, and have a party. It's not going to be disappointment. It's not going to be shame-inducing. It's going to be an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So.
And your season and all that evaluative, like, deconstruction was 3 years.
It was 5.
5 years. So if you're in it, be in it, and just be patient, and go ahead and put your yes on the table. So maybe you can move the finish line up and have more joy sooner and more freeness sooner. Thank you for joining us today on this episode. Thank you for coming on and just sharing your life with us and letting us see behind the curtain of religion.
Yeah. It's been fun.
And if we can, if me or Sam can be a blessing to anybody out there, if you want us to review your thought life, if you want to sit with a brother, you can hit New Spring Church up very easily. You can find girls and guys there that are ready to serve, or any church for that matter. You can also just text below in the stream, and we're happy to correspond or point you to somebody who's has a more clinical experience than we do. But thank you guys for joining us. Like and subscribe if you want to support us. We have a little Patreon. You can click below, and we will see you next episode.